everyone, and welcome to the LatinX Business Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Gomez, and if you're looking to demystify the world of business through the raw, authentic stories of Latinx entrepreneurs, you've come to the right place. As someone with an MBA and an IRS enrolled agent license, I've spent years helping freelancers, partnerships, and S corporations navigate the often tricky waters of the US tax law. Now, I'm bringing that expertise and passion to this community right here. So thank you for tuning in, and you know what? It's time to talk business. Hey, Gina, is that you?
Yes. Hi, Randy. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Very energized and ready to kick ass today.
Awesome. Yeah, I just got back from the gym right now. So, funny. Sometimes I go to the gym and I feel super energized, and other times I feel like, and that just got me more tired.
And do you feel like really hungry too?
Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
I actually switched over to like a high protein diet recently.
Mhm.
I feel even more hungry, and I don't understand it. And
I
it
get that.
it is so hard, like to hit the protein goals, but I'm learning. I'm learning. That's all I could say. Something new to me, but yes, I do. I always feel hungry right after I work out because I wake up so early. But yes, no, thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're super busy, and you have your law firm, but you also have your real estate that you work with. Yeah, that's like two companies, right? That you're managing. So definitely, I'm very grateful of your time today. Okay.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. What is your preferred pronoun? Just so I address you by the right one.
She, her.
She, her. Okay. And then within the Latinx community, how do you identify yourself? Like Mexican American, Hispanic, Latina, Chicana?
I definitely identify as Mexican American. While I was born in Mexico, I was raised and grew up here in the US, but I definitely know my value and heritage that my parents have passed down. And I love my culture, I love my heritage. But obviously, like not actually having been raised in Mexico, it's a little bit different. I think from like example, family members that I have that were actually raised there. It's I wish that I could have gone to maybe study over there at some point because there's a lot of things that I don't know about,
Mhm.
my country and my culture,
Yeah.
but definitely learning as I go. But yeah, I would say if I had to put a label, it's Mexican American.
Okay. Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point. It's a real struggle with a lot of Mexican American individuals, right? We grew up here in the US, but our roots are Mexican. I totally feel you when you say like I wish I could go out there and like have study for 2, 3 years. Because I have some friends that did that, and I wondered, I was like, why are they doing that? Like
Yeah.
but I'm over here struggling in the US just trying to get by.
Even the
Not
the the language, like I have a cousin who's a lawyer over there, and like when she talks to me in like legal terms, um obviously proper Spanish from Mexico, I'm just kind of like, wait, what does that mean? You
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Oh no, that I can totally understand that. I have a client that came to me from Mexico City, and she's an attorney. So, when she talked to me, she was extremely proper, and I was just like hone in on what she was saying because everything was sounded so nice and so eloquent, right? And
yeah.
like you're used to like I don't know, just slang.
Yeah, the Spanglish, or you have to, Google the translation and you're like, yeah, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no. So yes, okay. Well, all right. Well, I'll definitely address you by she, her, and then Mexican American. And now, just really quick, what part of Mexico is your family from?
I was born in Guanajuato, and my parents are from there as well. I was born in a little, rancho, which is connected to a city by the name of Yuriria in Guanajuato. So yeah, that's where I was born, and that's where my
Okay,
family's from.
and that's where your family's at. All right. All right, cool. So let me ask you then, moving along to how did you become an attorney? And maybe take us through that journey and what happened there.
Yeah. So my goals since I was little was to be a telenovela actress because used to watch telenovelas all the time, and I'm like, I want to do that. And
Yeah.
even in high school and some college, I took like a lot of acting classes and stuff like that because I was really like trying to do that, right? But then my mom kind of was like, why don't you try and do something that's more like realistic? You would have to kind of go to Mexico and do all that to be become like that type of actress, right?
Mm.
Maybe I'll just have something else as a backup. And then life hit me when I was 19 years old. I got pregnant and I had my daughter at that time. So I was like, okay, I really need to do something that's going to pay the bills. So I
Right.
started working at a law firm. My undergrad was initially marketing, advertisement, and international business because I was leaning towards marketing. And then I started taking some, like I was very interested in like juvenile delinquency, criminal justice, stuff like that. And I had been in college for like 6 years already. And my counselor was like, yeah, Gina, maybe it's time for you to like get out of college, graduate. You keep changing your
Yeah.
majors. So then I got my degree in criminal justice so that I could just finish fast with a minor in marketing. And
Oh,
so then I got a job offer at a big law firm here in Chicago, and I took it. I was like, yeah, you know what? Let me try this. And while I was, doing it as a paralegal, I really, really enjoyed, every aspect of it, especially the going to trial part. And I realized, as the paralegal, I'm doing the majority of the work, and then
right.
the attorneys, kind of go and argue it. And I'm not saying that they don't do any work, but, I do a lot of it too. And I'm like, why can't I just argue this myself? So I would find myself going to court with them and like
Hmm.
kind of in my mind, kind of like already forming an argument. And then the attorney
Yeah.
would say exactly what I thought. And I'm like, okay, I think I kind of get this. I'm going to look into law school. So obviously, my family is not wealthy by any means. My parents came here, me and my mom came here with like literally our just what we had on, and my dad,
Hmm.
was already here, but like he didn't have anything aside from like a minimum wage job. So my mom, when I told her, I said, I'm gonna go to law school, and I'm probably gonna go away to law school. She was like, "You can't do that. That's a lot of money. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have that kind of money." And I was like, "Yeah, there's this thing called student loans. I'm gonna apply for them, and that's how I'm gonna do it." My dad was very supportive and was like, I even if I had to put a second mortgage on this house, you do what you got to do because that's what we came here for, and I want to know that you're secure.
Mm.
So luckily, they really supported me. They took care of my daughter while I was away at law school, and then came
Yeah.
back, and then just kind of started rolling, and that's, I came out with massive student debt,
Yeah.
but I would look at it this way, like I'll probably be paying my student loans forever, but what I know and what I've learned and the opportunities that have opened to me are worth it. So that's kind of how I got into the whole become a lawyer thing.
Yeah, no, that's such a great story. And also, you had a baby too, right? When you went to
Yeah.
college. So
Yeah.
that I think alone is a massive help. Student loans, I have them too. And like
Yeah.
just like you said, I'm
Yeah.
gonna owe them forever. I make minimum payments and stuff, but it's what we have to do in order to like even get over the hurdle of like trying to graduate. And that's what I was going to say earlier. I think, while I was over here in undergrad struggling, trying to pass by or like, like make it, I don't know how I would have done that thinking or going to Mexico trying to pick up a whole nother language and idioms and like local terms and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And just even culture, because yeah, I'm telling it's such a huge like battle here. So to hear that, your parents were super supportive. I love that. And that's really like the Mexican American experience, right? Like most of our family is in Mexico, so we have to rely on our family here
Yep.
extremely like a lot. I want to say like extremely hard, because that's all we have. We really don't have more family. And, Mexicans, we have a lot of family, but like, I'm telling you, like all of my mom's family is in Mexico. Half of my dad's family is here and everyone's spread out. So yeah, no, it's a common thread within the Mexican American community, but I'm glad you bring it up because there's a lot of, I mean, at the time, I don't think I could put this into terms and what it was, but I definitely do feel that now it's like a common thread woven through our heritage here in the US, right?
Yeah. And I
Um,
think it's important for people to not be scared of good debt. there's such a thing as good debt and bad debt. When you're investing in yourself and you're investing in something like going to law school, going to medical school, being an engineer, whatever it is, it's for education. Like that's good debt. Like don't be
Mm-hmm.
scared of it. You don't you default. They say they foreclose on your house or whatever the case may be. Hopefully, I'll never get to that, but they
Yeah.
could never take away what you know, and
Oh,
that
100%.
knowledge
Yes.
is what's going to get you through and open so many doors for you.
Yes, yes. And even now, like even for example, like you're running your own business, I run my own business. I'm a tax firm, you have a law firm. So let's talk a little bit more about your law firm because your law firm, what kind of services do you guys provide?
So I started off doing criminal law because, I really loved going to trial and all that, and family law. And then
Okay.
slowly I started transitioning into doing more immigration work because I'm an immigrant and I felt the need to help people with this because it's immigration laws in the US are so screwed up. So I started doing immigration, and now I do a lot of real estate. So the main areas that my law firm focuses on right now is real estate, all types of real estate transactions from buying, selling, foreclosures, evictions, breach of contract claims to doing immigration. I still
Yeah.
do the immigration, like family-based immigration. I don't do business immigration. And
Yeah, and that's very important to differentiate because that's like a neat niche within the
yeah,
law.
yeah. So those are the two main areas that we practice in right now. Obviously, we still take certain cases on a case by case basis and on, the availability to take it. But
Right.
those two, if I had to say what are the two main things, those would be it.
Okay. Yeah, and so in terms of like any myths or misrepresentations, what kind of items do you find yourself struggling with or that you could give advice on in terms of immigration? And then we can move into real estate, I guess.
It's unfortunate that in the immigration world, there's a lot of people that get taken advantage of by, honestly, sometimes our own people. That
Mm,
for example, in Mexico, an attorney is a notario, right?
okay.
And I believe only attorneys can be notarios in Mexico. Here, all you have to
Oh,
do is be over the age and, get
certified.
fingerprinted. Yeah, you don't even need a degree or anything. So I think a lot of people that don't know the difference when someone opens up, an office and says, notario, they think it's an
Uh-huh.
attorney. So they go and get
Oh,
immigration advice from
yes.
someone that doesn't know what they're talking about, or maybe knows how to fill out a form but doesn't really know the legal ramifications, and then
Right.
these people end up in deportation proceedings, or they pay this outrageous amount of money and they can't find the person anymore. So in immigration, I think it's a lot of misrepresentation as to who is actually representing you and what they're
Mm-hmm.
representing you on. And there is no such thing as, I went to so and so and me arreglaron bien rápido, or I paid a
Yes.
fine and I got, me arreglaron right away. Because 9 out of 10 times when they do that, it's fraud. If
Uh,
you have to be very careful, and then that can
yeah.
come back and bite you in the future.
So, and it's funny, I'm having like this aha moment over here, right? Because like I have like clients that are attorneys, they also do immigration, but I was just thinking about the correlation between if our ancestors and our people come from Mexico or other parts in the world where you need to be an attorney legally to be able to be call yourself a notary, they come and they see that like a notary here is someone they can trust 100%, right?
Right.
Blindfoldly. So, and it's funny because I mean, I've thought about that even myself when I first started doing taxes. It's so simple to check and see like, did they put self-prepared or did they put their name, their address, their phone number? And are they legally able to like, sign that tax return for you? But most people don't know that. So like to me, it's always been astonishing how someone would just blindly trust me because, this old let's say a couple would come to me and say, like, you read this, you sign it. Okay, yeah, sign it for me. And I'm like, whoa, or like they 100% trust you. So to me, it's always been a huge responsibility to do right by them, right?
Yeah.
And now that you mentioned that, see, I had no idea. I had no idea that like to be a notary in Mexico, you have to be an attorney. And I have a couple cousins that are attorneys out there too. So, I'm definitely gonna talk to them about this next time I see them. But I
Yeah.
feel like there is cultural barriers, and even if you think you're doing something right, like at the end of the day, it can turn around and like, bite you in the butt, right? So no, I'm glad you bring that up because the other thing I was going to ask about immigration is the current situation of immigration. So I had a client a couple of weeks ago who said, "Hey, my partner, like, we paid all this money and he got his green card, or right, or green card, or workers
Yeah. Oh,
residency."
work.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
was and I was just like, so confused. And I was like, interesting. I was like, you paid a lot of money for that. He's like, yeah, the attorney's great. He just moved doors and he did everything super fast. But I was like, is that really the case, like the current immigration situation, or what's going on? Because I know the last time I had an attorney on the show, it was the Trump administration. So I'm super just curious about that myself. And if I'm curious, other people are going to want to know.
Yeah, I get a lot of people that say, "Oh, this other firm that, I hired from like Utah or wherever, they said they can get me my work permit, right away, this and this and that."
Mm-hmm.
And now I I have I have a license to uphold, so I got to be honest. I'm like, listen, you don't qualify for a work permit.
Mm-hmm.
Don't, like, unless you lie, and I'm not going to do that. And the problem is that there are people out there that will do that for you, because they don't care. They're not even licensed, so they'll apply for a work permit under false pretenses, and then at the end of
Sure.
the day, you're going to get screwed.
Right, if
So
it's discovered, right? Like if it's discovered
yeah,
that that was not correct. How would that
right.
happen? Like, so does the immigration department, what is it? I don't even know the proper name, to be honest, but do they audit cases like years later, or how does that, or maybe is it just only through the application process that it gets discovered?
Well, usually when you need a work permit, it's because you obviously are in some kind of immigration proceeding or you're here illegally, right?
Yeah.
So if you're applying for a work permit, sooner or later, you're going to apply for something else and they will find out. And work permits expire, right? They're not forever. So when they expire, you have to go and renew it. And if that person that lied for you is not around anymore, you have to literally put the same information that you put on the first one, but you probably don't even know what that is because it's a lie. So now
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of like in limbo. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
no, I see your point.
yeah. So it's just like I always tell people, listen, when it comes to immigration, don't lie. It
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
matter. Do not lie because I mean, I don't know how they find out, but they probably know you better than you know yourself,
I believe it. There's facial recognition, there's pictures, people post things all the time. And now, what's the other one? There's AI now happening. So there is so much out there that I am on your side on this one.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking when you know somebody that really deserves it and you're unable to help them, but you're helping them by not putting them in a worse position.
100%. And that's so funny because that's why people come to me too. And people ask me, like, Randy, I don't have to like hold on to the receipts, right? I was like, yes. So, like in tax, for example, the law is super archaic. It's so old. It hasn't been renewed. I doubt that anyone will push to renew it anytime soon. But if you don't have your receipts, a receipt or proof of payment is very different from an invoice, because invoice, you just get invoice. That doesn't show that you paid it unless it says you paid it on September 18 or 19 at this time, right? So, and then people are like, well, now I have my bank cards and my credit cards and my bank statements and credit card statements. And I was like, that's great. That's actually probably the best strategy you can take to maximize your deductions, but that will not prove your expenses to the IRS or the state. They'll take them and they'll put them to the side. So I always tell my clients, I need to get you audit ready today. Today is audit ready, what we're talking about, because 3 years from now, when audits happen, you're going to have to go back and do all this work, right? And that's
Exactly.
the thing. I feel like people don't understand. And like, in the beginning, I guess I used to be more sensitive and would take it more personal if they didn't want to take my advice. But right now I'm saying, like, like I've been doing this for 14 years. So I know how the IRS works. I see them every year. There's audits I help conduct every year as well. And you learn, right? It's basically experience, 100%. I'm glad that you're saying, like, like always be honest and just always put in the truth, because you're right. I don't like, I think the figure my client had told me was like $10,000. And I was like, Jesus Christ, that's so much money. But he said it only took 4 months. And I was like, so now I'm
Wow.
worried. Now I'm worried, Now I'm worried for him, but I'm also, I'm also grateful for people like you and me who are like, even if it takes longer, or even if we do the right thing, but then, you still don't get approved, like you're not taking someone's money in vain. Because I'm never trying to get rich off my own people. What I'm trying to do is like, get rich off my value, really, right? Or like make my value what's valuable, like the piece of paper that I'm filling out for you.
Right.
So yeah, I know. But no, yeah, and I was really curious just because, I know there's a different administration, so things change. And of course there's always like different laws that like administrations enact. So yeah, I also kind of wanted to know, like, what's your take on, like, Trump versus Biden's administration in terms of immigration right now?
Well, I mean, with Trump, right, we had a lot of people getting deported. We had a lot more action with people just being returned. And obviously there was the famous like locking people up in cages, which, a lot of people argue, well, Obama did the same thing. And I'm like, but we're not talking about Obama, right? We're talking about
No.
Trump. And, there's a difference between detaining somebody in a holding cell with their kids versus locking somebody up in a holding cell, taking their, newborn child away from them, and then 2 years later claiming you lost the child. That's a big
Right.
difference, right?
Yeah.
So I think that the Trump administration didn't care about immigrants, really didn't want them here,
Yeah.
didn't really understand the value that we bring to this country. And Biden, hasn't done much more to like help us, which I'm kind of annoyed because, we had control of Congress at one
Yeah.
point, and, that was the time to do something. But just like Obama, nothing was done when we had the opportunity to do it. But at
Yeah.
least he's being a little bit more lenient, on the immigration laws. Like people aren't getting
Hmm.
deported left and right. But then it's almost like too lenient to an extent, because a lot of people are coming in because they're like, well, you go into the US and ask for asylum, and, they'll give it to you, or they'll let you
Yeah.
in. So I think there's got to be like a balance between the two, as opposed to like, too lenient or too strict.
Yeah, well, and I think about it too, right? Because, I have the privilege and the luck of being born here. I wonder, like, how hard is it, obviously, when you're up in Capitol Hill to be put against like two different opposing views every day,
Yeah.
and how to maintain that balance? Because at the end of the day, you do need to look out for this republic, right? For the US. But
Hello? Yeah, I don't know what happened.
okay, I don't know. Maybe I think I moved one of these things here and it hit the finish recording. So I apologize, but
Oh,
we'll
no
pick up.
worries.
I'll delete this part and then I'll combine them. So, let's see, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I was talking about how hard it must be to maintain that balance when you need to take care of your republic. But then just like you just said right now, the value is insurmountable in terms of what type of value, not only culturally, but money wise, right? Like
Yeah.
how much value do immigrants bring, right? Because they take up jobs that people don't want to take on, like, and they do other work, and they're paying taxpayers, and they pay a lot of tax, let me tell you, sometimes because they don't want to deal with an audit. And then other times, like, yeah, they're just contributing to this country so much. But yes, thanks for giving me your opinion on it and the current situation, because it definitely must be hard to balance both things out. Because, I feel like Biden is a president that sees the value of immigrants, obviously, to this country, but there's always things that, I guess he needs to balance out up there in the Hill.
Yeah, because there's always that safety issue too, right? Like not everyone that comes here is a criminal, like Trump said. We're not criminals and rapists and whatever he said about us, but there are some people that are, and like, how do you tell the difference? So there should be some kind of, I'm not one that's like, let everybody in and, we're the best people, but there's got to be some guidelines or something that makes it fair. Because a lot of times I hear people say, oh, well, you guys have it easy. All you have to do is cross the border. And I'm like, do you really think that that's easy? You guys, I just had
Yeah.
this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday who's of Indian descent, and he was born in India, came here on a student visa. And we were talking about this. I said, you guys come here on a visa. 9 out of 10 times, your parents, you come from a family that is able to afford, giving you an education and all that. We have to cross the border, risk our lives, risk getting deported, and we don't have much money. We come here because of that reason, because we want to have a better future. So when people say, you guys come here the easy way, it really irks me. And I'm like, especially people from South America. Do you know how many borders they had to cross to get here? How is that the easy way?
Right. Not
You
just
know?
art. Yeah, exactly. And with the waves of immigrants that were coming even the last year or two, right? I recently went to Tijuana because, it's so close to Los Angeles. And there's a whole section where there's a lot of Haitians that are just living and working, and they're selling stuff like, like our people, like on the streets and stuff. And you just see them everywhere in TJ now. They're forced diasporas. Like, I feel at the end of the day, there's all these conspiracy theories too, but like, if your country was like well positioned, why would you even want or feel the need to leave? Like, I have cousins and family members, or even people I've met in like Mexico City, who are like, I have everything here. Like, I don't
Right.
need to leave. Right? They have good jobs. They
Exactly.
have good families they come from, or maybe they don't, but they were able to get a good education. So to me, I think about all that stuff. It's so hard to be like black and white for me in my head, but a lot of people see issues in terms of black and white.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what I find hard. But let's talk about your real estate, because I think that's super exciting. So let's switch a little bit topics. Tell me more about your real estate, how that works within your firm, and then talk to us about the group that you're part of, the We Win.
Yeah. So, I became a real estate agent here in Illinois while I was studying for the bar. Because, I couldn't work while I was studying for the bar. It's, very intensive. You really have to
Mm.
study for that. So for like, 3 months of my life, I wasn't able to work. But I had a child. I couldn't just keep letting my parents, financially do everything. So I wanted to help. And a friend of mine who was a realtor said, hey, why don't you apply for your real estate license? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I wasn't really into real estate prior to that. I never really thought I would ever be a real estate attorney or
Yeah.
anything like that. So I
Uh-huh.
was like, yeah, I don't know. He's like, just try it. Like, sell a house or two. It'll set you for the 3 months. I'm like, okay, fine. So at the time,
Smart. Smart advice.
yeah, yeah. So my husband, who was, my boyfriend at the time, also was really interested, and he was already doing some real estate investing. So I told him I was going to do this, and he's like, well, I'll do it with you. I'm like, okay. So we both took the test, became realtors. I was able, luckily, to sell 2 houses during that time, which really kept me afloat until I got my bar results and got my job. Fast track to the house. You know what I think it is? I think it's every time I get an incoming call that
Oh,
happened, but I put it on airplane mode, like do not disturb. I don't know why it's still letting.
the calls through.
Yeah, I
Okay,
don't know.
no
I apologize.
worries. So what I'll do is I'll connect all these together, and then that way, because I can pass it along to the editing team.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so don't worry about that. As long as I put it all in one. If
Perfect.
you were talking about passing the bar exam 3 months, and then fast forward, you sold 2 houses. So you sold 2 houses. You did say that.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, so I sold the 2 houses, and that got me through the summer and through, up until I was able to get my job as an attorney and get my bar results. And then fast forward to 2009, 10, when the housing crisis hit. I was, again, a criminal law attorney and a family law attorney. A lot
yeah,
of
that was
people,
wait, back in 2007, 2008?
yeah,
Yeah, like I
2007,
think it kind of
2008.
started in 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of people were like, hey, abogada, can you help me with a loan modification? And I was like, a loan, what is that? So I started looking into it because a lot of people were coming to me with these questions, and I started doing it and helping people with that, which also led me to then become a foreclosure defense attorney, because a lot of these people were in foreclosure. So that kind of got
Mhm.
the legal aspect of real estate started for me, in addition to, like, I would do closings for my husband's clients, because he was actively doing real estate. And
Okay.
me and my husband always wanted to actually, like, do real estate investing and invest in properties and stuff like that. But just like a lot of people, we always thought my God, you have to have a lot of money. You have to have
Yeah.
some reserves, we can't do it, blah, 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 blah. So fast forward to 2018, a friend of mine who was also a realtor, I ran into her at a NARAP event and she goes, how are you? Long time no see, blah, blah, blah. And I go, hey, I've seen your Facebook post and I see that you're starting to do flips. And she's like, oh, yeah, I started doing that. I'm like, how are you doing it? Because I know she also is like me, doesn't come from a family with lots of money, isn't
Okay.
rich or anything. I'm like, did
Yeah.
you just win the lotto or what happened? And then so she invited me to this event. It's a 3-day event. It was like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And she goes, go to this event. That's where I went. And that's how I scaled. And I said, if I go to this event and they're talking about give me $50,000, here's a CD and an 800 number, I'm going to bill you because, Fridays and Saturdays are the busiest for me. So I'm going to lose out on that business to go to this.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I promise you. And this is somebody that I really respect and has a lot of credibility. So me and my husband were like, okay, let's go. So we went to this event that's for real estate investors. It teaches you how to become a realtor. It connects you with private money lenders. It connects you with even where you can get properties and all that. So I went ahead and joined the group, and 3 months later, I got my first investment property, and then I kept scaling. So while I was doing that in this group that I joined, people would be like, oh, do you do closings for real estate? I'm like, yeah, I do. So then they started sending me their files, investor files, right? Which is a different type of closing than you do for
Yeah.
like a first time home buyer, right? Different type of
Oh,
things.
okay.
So
Yeah, I
I
was about to
started,
ask that. I was like, I'm familiar with the first time home buyer closing process, but I don't remember like an attorney being involved. But this is for investing specific.
yeah. So here, there
Okay.
are some states that are not non-attorney states, meaning that you don't need an attorney to do a real estate closing. You can do it directly with the title company. We are an attorney state, lucky for me, where
Mhm.
you do need an attorney to do a closing, right? So I
Okay.
started doing this for a lot of investors, and word got around. And the more I did it, the more I learned about all different types of investing, like creative financing, wholesaling, all these different types of things. And so now I am pretty much an investor real estate attorney because 90% of my clients are investors. So that's kind
Got
of how
that. Okay.
it all started.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. A couple questions about that one. All right. So you got your first, I want to say, investment property 3 months later. Tell me a little bit about that process and how that was. Like, was it very cumbersome? Like, was it a little bit easier than you thought?
Yeah, so after I went to that 3-day event, they have a further education and a further network that will help you if you want to join that network, which I did. And
Hmm.
I had my business planning meeting with the guy that's actually teaching the courses, not, consultants or anything. And
Hmm.
he kind of drew a map for me of what I needed to do to be able to be in a position where I can buy and refinance and, not have issues, which was pretty much like credit. My credit at the time, I'm like, I have
Yeah.
really good credit. And he's like, what's your credit score? I'm like, 660. And he's like, no. He's like, there's no reason why you don't have at least, a 720. You're an attorney, you should have this. So he started
Mm.
kind of looking through my financials, everything, devised a plan. Literally within 3 months, my score went up and I did everything he told me to do. And so I was ready. And then he actually gave me my first property to that I bought. He does properties all the time and finds properties all the time. So he's like, here's a
Yeah.
property I think you should buy. I'll give it to you, and is this going to be a good property for you? So we did it. We got the property and we got it. How did we finance it? We financed it through private money lending. So this group that I belong to also has a lot of private money lenders that, they will only lend to people in this group because we're vetted to be actually credible people. So everyone's kind of vetted
Mm.
to make
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
that no one's trying to scam anybody, and
Yeah.
people know
Right.
what they're doing. So
Yes.
I got that property with the private money lender who not only gave me the money for the purchase but also gave me the money for the rehab. So we rehabbed the property within 3 months, and then we refinanced it, paid back the private money lender, and then kept doing it. So it sounds very easy. And it could be very easy once you know what you're doing, but you definitely need the mentorship and the guidance, because had I not had that and I just went ahead and got this property on my own, I would have made so many mistakes, because some things that I
Right.
thought I should do were like, yeah, don't do that.
No, no, exactly. And then not only that, like the experience, right?
Yeah.
Experience is worth so much, because I would not know what to do if I bought a rental or an investment property. I'll be like, well, what's the first thing we get done? I guess, maybe I'll write down a list of things, but
Yeah.
what is, and then, people who do rehabs all the time, they know pricing and they're like, all right, you can get cheaper material here. I mean, not cheaper material, but like less expensive, but still get, the good quality material. And that's stuff we don't know, right? Like, I'm a tax expert and you're an attorney. So flipping homes, that's a construction, that's a whole nother field. Okay. So then
Yeah.
you rehab this house after 6 months. No, wait, you rehab the house. Yeah. After 6 months of getting it, you're able to pay off the investors. And how, at that point, is the house yours or is it still owned by the investors?
No. So the house, when I close on the property, the house, I get it in my name. Everything's in my name. I get a private money loan from the investor, who then records a mortgage, in the property, just like any bank would do. And then once
Um,
I pay them off, they release
Gotcha.
the mortgage, release the lien. So now I refinance with, another lender and pay them off. And now I have a real mortgage on it, a 30-year mortgage on it.
Okay, gotcha. But that's a mortgage you take out on your own, and then it's probably at a lower interest rate as well.
Yes. So I do commercial loans, because one, they don't appear in your personal credit, which won't bring your debt to income ratio down. And I do
Yeah.
it under an LLC versus under my name, so that also it's, doesn't appear in your name all the time. I do, like, I have a commercial line of credit, and that's how I'm able to refinance properties.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because I was kind of wondering, like, how does, like, I have heard that your debt to ratio and income gets used up super fast when you start buying investment homes under your own name, because a lot of people start off that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, I was kind of wondering, like, okay, how does this become yours? But it's always yours. It's just that you need to pay back a loan. So that
Right.
makes sense. Okay, so then the 3-day event was worth it.
It was definitely worth it.
Okay.
Best $200 I ever spent.
Oh my God. Okay, that was gonna be my next question. I was like, how much did you invest in this 3-day event? And that was like, well, back in 2018, I'm sure it costs a lot more now.
Yeah. So I
Um,
originally did the 3-day, which was like, I think I paid like $200 for VIP passes, 200 me, 200 my husband. And then I
yeah.
joined the actual group, which is a lot more money.
Oh,
But
yeah.
again, I got that money back within my first property, so it was,
Mhm.
you know, it was an investment for sure.
Oh no, of course. And I'm even thinking, when you get ready to sell the investment home and your expenses that you had,
Mhm.
you're gonna be on the positive side anyways, right? Like at the end of the day, like you're gonna have all this profit, but then you're gonna have these write-offs to go against it. So it's gonna be very, very good for you. But yeah, no, because I definitely, obviously I see it on the tax side, but I'm already like thinking, oh, this is how it would be reported on the tax return,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm all thinking taxes over here. But yeah, no, okay. So tell me about the group you started then, because I know you went through this. Now you have your portfolio properties. If you don't mind me asking, the number of properties that you have in your portfolio, and then you can tell me about the group you started.
Yeah, so to date I have 60 doors. I've done about 15 flips, and I've done about 20 wholesales since I started. I became part of the group,
Hmm.
that a lot of
Yeah.
investors started using me, and including the actual CEO of the group, the actual owner of the group, started using me as well. So now I'm his like in-house counsel. Within like 6 months of being in the group, I realized that, you know what, when anytime that someone goes to buy a house, whether it's a first time investment, whatever, if you're married, or even if you just have a girlfriend, fiance, you always want their opinion on, do you think this is a good house?
Right.
If we're buying it for the family, the woman kind of gets the last say so, right? So
Hmm.
then I'm like, why are not more women doing investing? Like, we don't have a lot of women in this group that, it's predominantly men. There weren't a lot of women. So me and my best friend, who was also in the group, were like, why don't we start a women investor branch off of this where we can kind of create a safe space for women and teach them how they can do it. Because one of the main reasons I wanted to do real estate investing, I don't have a 401k. I have my own business. There's no like 401k, there's no, profit sharing, nothing like that. So the day I stop practicing, what am I going to have to show for it?
Right.
So I said, well, real estate, if you look at, a lot of these like multi-millionaires, billionaires, like what's the one thing that they all have in common? They all started investing in real estate, and that has been the safest investment for them, and the one that actually yields returns if you do it the right way. So I know a lot of women that, for whatever reason, they got divorced, or maybe they never got married, or, they just want to help out in the family, but they don't know how. Maybe they're stay-at-home moms or whatever. This is something you can do from your living room. So why not start investing? Why not start doing this? So we started this group called We Win, which is it stood for Women Entrepreneur, Women Investor Network, because we also wanted to help women become entrepreneurs. Because there's a lot of women out there that are construction workers, that do have their general contracting license, that are electricians, that are plumbers, that are like there's a lot of women out there that are part of this trade, but we don't really hear about them because anytime you think of, even when you think of an investor, you think of a man, right? So so then we started this group, to kind of educate women on, how you can do it too, and, help them through the process. We started this in 2019, and during the pandemic, we got hit with the pandemic. We did a lot of virtual meetings. Obviously, don't have the same effect as in person, but we also got a lot of new people that were like, well, I'm in the middle of a pandemic, I'm at home, maybe I should give this a try, especially women. So we were able to build a really huge following here in Illinois of women that are like, you know what, I want to do this. Like, how do I do this? And it's given a lot more awareness. And now in this investor group that I belong to, we have a lot of women now in it. And it makes me so happy because that's the goal, right? Like, have something to fall back on, even a 401k. My mom worked in a factory for many, many years. Thank God I was able to have her stop working and able to like pay their house off and support them and, be there for them just like they were for me. But for many years, she worked at a factory. And then I think, I don't remember the year, but there was like a stock fell like really bad. Just overnight, she lost half of her 401k.
Oh, yeah, so many people did. There's a great session. And you know what? And I was going to ask you a couple of follow-up questions. How many women or, are part of the group? And then also kind of like requirements do you have for these women to be part of the group?
We don't have any requirements. If you're a woman, and even though it's a women group, for example, tonight I have a meeting, another meeting for women, but we get men that come too. And we're okay with that because we're like, hey, it's meant to help out women. But if men want to come and contribute, we are more than happy. We don't exclude anybody out. So we have grown, I would say we've tripled the size of what we had in 2019, which is, thousands of women and men that have joined the group. And there's no requirement. It's completely free. It's open to anybody that wants to learn and wants to gain valuable information, and more so create a community. Because, within the group, if someone's like, hey, what, my toilet, got clogged, I can't find a plumber, one of my properties, the tenant, blah, 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 puts it in the group, someone else from the group will be like, oh, call this person, they're right by your area, they'll help you. And, it's really good to see that because we're kind of like,
the networking.
So there is no requirement. Do you want to invest? Do you want to learn how to invest? Are you even curious? Come to a meeting. Yeah,
and that's what I was going to ask next. I was like, what if a gentleman shows up and he says, I go by her and she and her.
We
So
don't
you answered my question. You
we
guys
don't
don't
care.
exclude anyone.
Yeah.
That's also good to hear because, you're right. I do see that in the business world, it's always more men. But, even in the last 10 years, I think historically, there's been more women opening up business than men, right? Which is very interesting because I do have a lot of women entrepreneurs that are my clients as well as men. I kind of have a little bit of everything right now, right? In terms of my clientele, like I have attorneys, some doctors, and construction companies, and it runs the gamut. I have like social media people who are making a good penny off of that and have
Yeah.
their companies they're running. But I find it really interesting that you're not charging for your group because obviously the one you went to was a 3-day event. They're like, we need to charge you because probably there was space they took up, physical
Yeah.
space or something like that, right? But I think that the importance of a strong mentor and someone that truly believes that you're the right person to be doing these transactions for them shows a lot, and it shows that you're definitely the right person or someone that can teach others as well, right?
Yeah.
Because you could do this and just, you're like, okay, I do this, I'll teach it to my kids and call it a day. But you're looking to spread the word and get it out there, not just to women, but men as well. But no, I love that. And that's actually the main reason why I started my podcast is because, born and raised in East LA myself, and my dad's an electrician, my mom's a stay-at-home mom. Like I never really had someone in the business world that I could just turn around and say like, hey, what about this, right? And I was
Yeah.
always interested in business and management and leadership and running groups and stuff like that. I always was part of all that in school, at work. And, so to me, this hopefully this community I'm building within the Latinx business podcast is something that was, other Latinos and Latinas can learn from or see that, there's a lot of us out there that have started our own companies. Everyone's just working in silos, but so no, thank you for starting We Win. I think that's amazing. Can I ask you a couple more follow-up questions on that one? Because I think
Of
this is like
course.
really good for the listeners to listen. So in terms of like your staff, now that you've grown the organization or the group, how big is your team? Like, do you need like 5 people to run this type of group? Do you guys meet every other week? And what are some of the things that people can expect if they like attend your in-person meetings? I mean, I threw you like 3 questions right now, but the last or the fourth one I'm going to ask you is, can someone join virtually, like from another state?
Yeah. So we not all of our meetings are in person. Like for example, last week we had a Q&A session and that
Okay.
was virtual. So but all the meetings that are in person are also virtual. So yes, you can join from any part of the world and you can log in and join for free. Like there's no charge. If we have special events, sometimes we'll do like a workshop or something that, we'll have to cover some cost and, we'll charge like $20 or $25, whatever it is to cover the cost. Since this is a women group that is a branch off of my mentor's actual program,
Mm-hmm.
we use a lot of his staff. So it's just me and my best friend, um, basically running it. And he allows us to use like his staff for setting it up,
Okay.
for marketing, for all that. So right now, if I had to say how many people run it, I would say 3, me and my 2 best friends, because my other best friend works for him. So she does a lot of the marketing and all that. But, we're very,
Yeah.
very, very lucky in that sense.
No, and that's great actually, because even that kind of, hearing from you is like you guys are the background and you're upheld by their team. So not
Yeah.
only are you guys the experts, but then you have another set of experts backing you guys up. And
Right.
that's good to hear, right? Because we want to get Latinos and Latinas out there, especially Latinas out there to invest, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's like I always say, we come here for a reason. We come here to, advance our future, invest the future of our kids. And you just build you don't have to be a millionaire. I mean, you could just build a nice life for yourself and then help your kids become millionaires. And so
Yeah.
why not own a piece of America? Why just of the US, I should say? Why just come here and settle?
Yes, no, I totally agree with you. So, it's funny. My grandpa in Mexico had like a couple apartments that he built on his property. And I believe like maybe the last 10, 15 years of his life, like
Yeah.
he just lived off them, right? And like, yeah, my grandpa's always been like, well, he passed away like 10 years ago, but he was always like, get an investment property, or look at what I built. And he was in construction, so he built them. right? So
Yeah.
like, but after he retired, like, 20 years in retirement, then, he was basically collecting all this profit that, of course, nobody reports, but that's
Yeah.
a different story. But yes, I totally agree with you. Let me see what other questions I had over here, because I know I kind of went a little off topic for a sec. Let's see. How about, oh yeah, I was going to ask about minimum capital requirement, but you said there isn't,
Yeah.
right? So there's no minimum capital from people who want to join the group to become investors. And then scaling, how about scaling? Because that was a question I had. How do you scale when you just start off with one property? Like, how do you get the second one?
So the way that, obviously, like I said, we belong to this group, so we have access to a lot of private money lenders. So for the first year of us buying properties, we used the private money lenders. And then in order to scale faster, we, once we had established and had, I think, like 5 properties under our belt, we opened up a line of credit with a commercial lender. And the line of credit is based on assets, not so much on income or, your credit. So when we opened up,
Okay.
yeah, so when we opened up the line of credit, we got approved for like a 2 million line of credit. So we would, then get properties under contract to use our line of credit. Obviously it still functions like a traditional lender where they have to do an appraisal, and it still has to make sense. They're not just gonna give you one just because. But we were able to do that and still keep borrowing money from private money lenders. So that kind of helped us scale sooner. But the way that a lot of people do it as well is, let's say I bought a property, the purchase price is like 85,000, right? And it's going to take me 15,000 to rehab it. So I borrow a total of 100,000 for this property from my private money lender. And when I refinance the property based on the work I did to it, the actual after repair value of it is 150. So my actual refinance is up to 75% of the after repair value. So if it's worth 150,000, 75% of that is 112.5. So I pay off my $100,000 loan to the lender, and then I can pull out the 12,500 from it to use it for another property, or I can leave it there and just keep my payments lower and not have to pull any money out. So if you do that enough, you build your own cash flow. If you pull out the money from, and you still leave a lot of equity in it, because you leave 25% of the equity in the property, so you're still secure.
Gotcha. Yes. That way you don't have to pay the extra fees and all that monthly. Yeah, because I'm thinking now, like, actual, like, how do you have to probably come down and figure out what actual profits are, right? Like, even interest and pennies to the dollar. But okay, no, that makes sense to me. That we won't go deeper into that, because I think if someone wants to go deeper into that, they need to reach out to you, right? They
Yes.
need to connect with your group. They need to check you out, join the group, and go through the process themselves. But I greatly appreciate all the information you've given us today. I think it's amazing, like the amount of information you were able to provide. And then I guess just my closing questions to you would be, what is the greatest lesson or that you've or a piece of advice you can give to our listeners, even within the last year or two, with all these changes during the pandemic, and now we're quote unquote out of it, and, but we're not. COVID's
Yeah.
making another round. What kind of advice would you give to someone that wants to, either, go into real estate?
Well, I would definitely say knowledge is power, and experience is something no one can take away from you. So, you have to lose the fear. I think fear is what prevents us from growing and from evolving a lot of times, because we're scared. But, just like I tell my kids, I'm like, what are you scared of? Like, sit down and analyze, what is it that you're scared of? What's the worst case scenario? And what are the odds of that worst case scenario happening? If you do it, what's the best case scenario? And why not go for it and figure out, how to do it? And even if you fail the first time, you have that much more knowledge to do it again and not fail the second time, because if you don't fail, you're never going to know what it's like to win. If you don't lose, how do you know what winning is? If you don't fail, how do you know when you've succeeded? So don't be scared of failure. Don't be scared to lose, because you learn the most valuable lessons from that. I have learned the most valuable lessons from my failures and from learning how to do it again and do it again until I succeed. Don't give up, don't give up. And as Latinos, know your worth and don't settle for less. Because I see sometimes people are like, well, it's fine. I can do it with that. It's fine. And then someone else gets hired for the exact same position as you, knows less than you, but they make more money. Why? Because they speak up, because they know their worth. You need to know your worth. If you know that that's not enough for your knowledge and for your worth, don't settle. Keep looking. Like don't. The worst thing you can do is settle.
Love that advice. Yes, that's
Yeah.
such good advice because I think we're so used to, and maybe this has a little cultural aspect applied to it as well, where we come from countries where, services and physical goods cost a lot less than the American dollar. But we gotta fight through that. That's our struggle. We go to the best schools here in America. We pay the same amount of money to attend these schools. It costs us time away from our families that we value and cherish so much as Latinos,
Exactly.
right? And I love that you're giving that advice. But yes, and that was my last question. Again, your time is super valuable. Thank you so much. I think we went over already, but I'm gonna be super excited when this episode goes out. But yes, thank you again for coming on the show. I appreciate your time.
No, thank you. It's been awesome. I know we can keep on talking forever. Great conversations. Love it.
No, I do. I love it too. And you know what? Also, I forgot to mention, but I'll put your contact info and your website on the podcast notes. So if someone wants to get a hold of you, they can reach you through there. Would that be the best mode of them contacting you, either emailing you or giving your firm a call?
Yeah, emailing me or calling is definitely, emailing is the best. But sometimes, what happens is if my, super sensitive system doesn't, detect your email, it'll go into my spam. So I am very responsive. Like within 24 hours, you will either get a call or an email response. If you email me and you don't get a response, assume I didn't get it. Call the office, and say, hey, I sent an email, can, you just verify she got it, or whatnot.
Okay.
So, just keep that in mind.
Definitely. And then just to make sure, the website is www.diazcase.com.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, I won't take up more of your time. Thank you so much, Gina. I appreciate it. And then we'll be in contact.
Thank you. Have a lovely day.
Okay. You too. Bye. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with your network. Your support helps our Latinx business community grow stronger with every listen, and I truly invite you to connect with us. Send us your questions, your comments, or even your own business stories to randy@rgtaxes.com. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, keep learning, keep building your business, and keep growing your business mindset.